This is a very sad story of Arthur, a 6-year-old boy from West Midlands, who was brutally killed by his parent. Arthur's parents, Thomas Hughes and Olivia Labinjo-Hughes, separated when Arthur was 1 year old, and he lived with his mother, while both shared custody of Arthur. However, in February 2019, Olivia Labinjo-Hughes stabbed her new abusive partner to death in an alcohol and drug-fueled rage. She is currently in jail for the manslaughter of 29-year-old delivery driver Gary Cunningham in their home. Following Olivia's conviction, Thomas Hughes became the primary carer for Arthur, and both lived with Thomas Hughes' parents in an annex behind their house. Hughes met a new wife, Tustin, on a dating website, and on the day of lockdown in March 2020, Thomas and Arthur were staying at Tustin's house, and they decided to merge households at her house for lockdown. In May 2020, Hughes and Tustin's treatment of Arthur worsened. He was made to stand for hours as punishment, and Tustin would send Hughes videos and clips of Arthur crying. The couple repeatedly insulted the child, referring to him as Devil's child, and the clips revealed Arthur calling for help from his grandmother, an uncle with whom he had a close bond, and saying, "Nobody loves me." Arthur was removed from the bedroom where Tustin's children slept and was forced to sleep on the living room floor, even when Tustin's children slept elsewhere. When schools reopened in June, Arthur didn't attend, and Hughes made up excuses to the school for the child's absence. The couple installed a camera to observe Arthur during periods of isolation. Over a 3-day period from the 12th to the 14th of June, Arthur was isolated for 25 hours in a hallway. While Tustin's children could be seen enjoying food and activities, on the 15th of June, Hughes hit Arthur with a belt on his legs, and at one point told Tustin to just end him. On the 16th of June, CCTV footage showed Arthur looking weak. Tustin, Hughes, and Arthur visited Tustin's hairdresser, and while there, Arthur was repeatedly shouted at. After they arrived home, Hughes went out around 1 p.m., leaving Arthur with Tustin, and Tustin is believed to have carried out a fatal assault at 2:29 p.m. She called Hughes on the phone, and CCTV footage showed her moving through child and trying to prop him up on the sofa. Hughes returned home, and they tried to give the child a drink and paracetamol medicine, and only then, 12 minutes later, did Tustin call 999 and tell medics that Arthur had fell and banged his head, and while on the floor, banged his head another 5 times. Paramedics found Arthur unconscious and tended to him, having arrived to find a neighbor performing CPR on the scene. Arthur had bruising to his head and body, seemed underweight, and his gums were bleeding. He was taken to hospital, but sadly, despite the best efforts of medical staff, he died at 1 a.m. the following morning. Arthur was left with a brain injury, which he was unable to survive. Tustin took a photo of the dying boy, which she sent to Hughes. Arthur was taken to Birmingham Children's Hospital. However, it was decided that nothing could be done to save him, and he died later that night, aged 6 years old. At the time of his death, a medical review found that he was covered in 130 bruises, that he had been poisoned with salt, and that the extent of his injuries amounted to torture. West Midlands police investigators trawled through hours of CCTV from inside Tustin's home, along with hundreds of videos, audio files, and photos found on Tustin's and Hughes' mobile phones, and thousands of messages they sent each other. The evidence they revealed clearly illustrated the systematic cruelty inflicted on Arthur by both Tustin and Hughes. Police worked with medical experts from various areas of clinical medicine and pathology to show that the 6-year-old's death had been caused by a head trauma inflicted on him by an adult, and the most likely way that happened was by him being vigorously shaken and his head banged repeatedly against a hard surface. Salt poisoning, bruising, and fatal blow to the head, hospital tests revealed. Arthur had abnormally high salt levels, and he was seen to have bruising in many areas uncommon for accidental bruising in a child. A post-mortem later revealed that Arthur had over 100 marks and bruises on his head, body, and limbs, including bruising of different ages. A specialist kidney consultant said that for Arthur to have had such high levels of salt in his system, he had either ingested at least 6.5 tablespoons of salt on the day he was fatally injured, which the expert couldn't see how a child would have done this, other than if he was deliberately force-fed a mix of salt and water by an adult, or that Arthur had repeatedly been poisoned with heavily contaminated food and/or water over a longer period of time. Emma Tustin was found guilty of the murder of Arthur Labinjo-Hughes, and Thomas Hughes was found guilty of manslaughter by a jury at Coventry Crown Court. Emma Tustin was jailed for life with a minimum of 29 years, after she was found guilty of murdering Arthur Labinjo. His father, Thomas Hughes, was convicted of his manslaughter and jailed for 21 years.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more.
The Peterborough Ditch murders were a series of murders which took place in Cambridgeshire, England in March 2013. All 3 victims were male and died from stab wounds. Their bodies were discovered dumped in ditches outside Peterborough. In Hereford, 2 other men were stabbed but survived. The perpetrator was Joanna Christine Dennehy, a Cambridgeshire woman, who was later sentenced to life imprisonment with a whole life order. Dennehy, born August 1982 in St. Albans, Hertfordshire, grew up in nearby Pondon and was an absent mother of 2 young children at the time of the killings. She specifically targeted men during her killing spree, telling her acquaintance Lloyd that she did not wish to kill a woman, especially not a woman with children. Lloyd stated Dennehy had wanted to kill 9 men in total, seeking to be like Bonnie and Clyde. Dennehy stabbed men for the purpose of entertainment, telling Stretch, "I want my fun. I need you to get my fun." She later told a psychiatrist that she had found murder to be more fresh, and that after the first killing, she got a taste for it. Kevin Lee was a property developer, landlord, and lover of Dennehy. Lukasz Slabaszewski, a Polish national, met Dennehy through a shared interest in drink and drugs, and John Chapman was a housemate of Dennehy. Slabaszewski was killed at some point between the 19th and the 29th of March 2013. Both Lee and Chapman were killed on the 29th of March. Lee's body was found the next day near Newborough. Dennehy had dressed his body in a black sequined dress before dumping the corpse. The bodies of Slabaszewski and Chapman were found on the 3rd of April near Thorney with stab wounds. In November 2013, Dennehy pleaded guilty to all 3 murders and to further attempted murders. Her sister Maria was unsurprised by the guilty plea and said, "I think she did that to control the situation. She likes people to know she's the boss." Dennehy was held on remand at HM Prison Bronzefield. Assessing psychiatrists later diagnosed Dennehy with psychopathic, antisocial, and borderline personality disorders. The trial began at the Old Bailey in London, where Dennehy could be seen laughing during proceedings, stating, "I have pleaded guilty, and that's that," when questioned about her decision. At one point during her trial, Dennehy stood up and told presiding Mr. Justice Spencer, "I don't want to be controlled by anybody. I don't want to be controlled by my lawyers, by the police, by anybody." On the 28th of February 2014, Mr. Justice Spencer called Dennehy a cruel, calculating, selfish, and manipulative serial killer and sentenced her to life imprisonment with an additional order that she should never be released due to the premeditation of each murder. Spencer said further that Dennehy was sadomasochistic and lacked the normal range of human emotions. Dennehy was the 3rd woman in the UK to be given a whole life tariff after Mira Hindley and Rosemary West. 2 men, Richards, 47, and Leslie Layton, 36, stood trial charged with a range of crimes relating to assisting Dennehy. Both decided not to give evidence in their defense. The jury began deliberation on the 4th of February 2014. On the 10th of February, Richards was found guilty of attempted murder, and Layton was found guilty of perverting the course of justice. On the 12th of February, Layton and Richards were convicted of all other charges.
True crime.